Let me start by saying that over the course of a few years, those of us living in the African, Nigerian diasporic communities, we have witnessed a steady drip, drip, drip of, let me put it mildly, concerning news from home. It's the threat of secession and separation. It's the threat of disassembly, the haunting specter of a failed state. It's food insecurity, it's poverty. You know the drill. Casual violence, the breakdown of supportive infrastructure, the herder-farmer conflicts. And at this moment, I don't need to go through the long laundry list of things that beset us as a nation. I think the underlying question that we ask right now is why? Why is it that after 60 years of performative independence, of practiced independence, the dream of a Nigerian state is yet to take off for millions of its citizens? Why is it that the so-called giant of Africa, in spite of the burgeoning GDP indices, is facing the threat of closure? Well, those questions aren't new. I've been asking them along with my elders since I was a kid living in Nigeria. And the answers we've provided over time aren't new either. Let me remind you of some of them. You might know some of the ones that I propose. Why are we not there yet? Why haven't we arrived as a nation in spite of all the promise? One, it's corruption. You've heard that before. I've heard that before. We've heard it all together. It's corruption. If only we get rid of corruption, everything will be fine and dandy with us as a nation. Two, it's a leadership gap. It's a crisis of leadership and competence, or the lack of governance structures. If only we get the right team in Aso Rock, right? If only we elect the next good guy, our situation will be fine. And I've heard that over and over and over again. Let's look forward to the next elections. Let's get the right person in there. And if we do that, Nigeria has the promise to take off as the next superpower, the next African superpower. And then the ones we all recognize, and it's quite charged in the polity right now. It's the Muslims up north, or it's the infidels down south. It's the evil on the other side. It's always the story of those that don't get it, those that worship the right way, those that are backward, that are sorry excuses for humans. And this leads to the corollary. The consequence of such thinking is that if only we get people of our faith, if only we get people of our tribal affiliations, if only we get people of our ethnicity elected to positions of power, then we might see a brighter day. Let me mention a last one. It's the lack of education. It's illiteracy. So we need to educate more people, send more people to school. And with education and an educated populace, Nigeria would stand a chance of living out its dream of being the giant of Africa. However, I think these explanations are insufficient, stunningly insufficient. Let me start with corruption. We often think of corruption as the inadequacy of a system, the bad, viral, almost epidemiological gap in a system that leaves the system open to misadventures or demise or some kind of corruption. But I think bureaucratic corruption is also a form of colonial imposition. Let us not forget that the very existence of a nation state is a form of corruption itself. Let me break it down in this form. That children have the impulse to learn from each other. They learn and they look around, they imitate each other, they mimic each other. It is only within the context of factory-styled schooling that looking to the side becomes cheating. What if what we summarily call, and this is not to elide or dismiss the very pernicious and violent forms of corruption that one cannot excuse away. But what if, let's ask the question, what if what we call corruption is an imposition, is the resilience of indigenous ways of being that have been imposed upon by the nation state? What if the ways that we think about the world, are still incarcerated in particular forms of being that we now call the nation state assemblage? Let me move on. The second idea is leadership. And if only we get the right guy in there, if only we get the right lady in Aso or on the throne, then everything will be fine. But that notion of leadership, that quest for the right team, it downplays the fact that humans are sponges of context, not independent agents acting upon the world. I remember in 2007 and 2008, jumping for joy when the United States elected President Obama, Barack Obama as president. And I loved his biography. I loved his background, a community organizer, a person for the people. And I expected that once this guy gets into the White House, I'm sure he would do stuff like progressive politics and all of that. What I didn't expect is that the White House was an actor, in itself, that Obama was, not the user as such, but also being acted upon by the resilience of the architecture of governance. In a way, we are not as coherent or as in charge as we think we are. The systems of governance are also actors. And so the idea that if only we get the right person with the right characteristics inside the White House, or inside Aso Rock, not the White House in this instance, inside Aso Rock, and then everything will be fine. It invisibilizes, it downplays the idea that Aso Rock is also an actor, that the nation state has its own imperatives, whether humans are present in it or not. But let's go ahead with these ideas. And then the other idea is that it's the other side, and those concepts and those ideas are quite charged right now in Nigeria. It's the ethnical, religious fault lines that it's dividing us, asunder, which recalls, brings to mind Chinua Achebe's "Things Fall Apart and the Center Cannot Hold." But it seems that the tragedy of the other, which is what I would call this reductionistic tale or story about the other side, the evil on the other side, the tragedy of the other is that we need the other to be fully ourselves. These reductionistic stories that we tell occlude and dismiss the complexities, the livelihoods of others that we have demonized as evil, as villains, or as wicked, right? And again, none of this is to really downplay the viciousness of the kidnappings, the horrible casual violence that now besets and beleaguers our streets in Lagos and other parts of the Federation. But it goes beyond the notion of blame, that in trying to find an answer, a convenient one at that, we tend to reduce the world into a unitary or atomic element, something that we can usually or pass around like a meme. And in doing so, we leave out the complexities of the situation. For instance, the idea that a certain faith tradition is evil, is wicked in itself, therefore the adherents are wicked, does not fully account for the fact that the text of a faith tradition, of a religion, isn't what determines the shape of that religion. A faith is an ecological, shifting, biological element or organisms, always in response to the environment around it. Let's not forget, for instance, that Christianity, globally touted as a religion of peace in the 11th to the 13th century, was responsible for the decimation of millions. I think the lowest estimates I've seen is about 1 million people. The highest is 3 million people. That between the 11th and the 13th century, the Knights Templar invading Jerusalem killed millions of people. And this is supposedly the religion of peace. Now, this is not, again, to downplay or demonize one faith or to elevate one above the other. Just to say that the texts that we have, the sacred texts that speak about our faiths, are not the only things that shape our faiths. There are other things that are happening in response to a faith that makes that faith what it is. And we have to look at a global picture. We have to look at how adherents are responding to the world around them before we allocate blame in the simplistic ways we have done, which has led to only these weaponized binaries that we're used to.